press, it's about to go down.
The American Mafia, also known in North America as the Italian American Mafia, or the Mob, is a sophisticated Italian-American criminal organization and crime syndicate. Originating as a branch of the Sicilian Mafia by Italian immigrants in the United States, this group eventually developed into a distinct entity, partially independent from the Sicilian Mafia. It included or incorporated other Italian immigrant and Italian-American criminals and crime groups, such as the American Camorra, operating in the United States and Canada, regardless of their Sicilian heritage. Commonly referred to as the Italian Mafia or Italian Mob in North America, these terms can also denote the related but separate Sicilian Mafia or other organized crime syndicates in Italy or Italian ethnic crime groups worldwide. Its members call it Cosa Nostra, our thing, or this thing of ours, and the American government labels it as La Cosa Nostra, LCN. Its name stems from the original Sicilian Mafia, with American Mafia initially signifying Sicilian Mafia groups active in the United States. The Mafia in the United States originated in impoverished Italian immigrant districts in New York's East Harlem, the Lower East Side, and Brooklyn. It also appeared in other northeastern U.S. areas and major cities like New Orleans and Chicago in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, following Italian immigration waves, particularly from Sicily and southern Italy. Groups from Campania, Calabria, and other Italian criminals in the U.S. merged with Sicilian mafiosi to form the modern pan-Italian mafia in North America. Currently, the American Mafia collaborates in various criminal ventures with Italian crime syndicates, such as the Sicilian Mafia, Camorra of Campania, and 'Ndrangheta of Calabria. The most crucial unit of the American Mafia is the family, which refers to the different criminal organizations within the Mafia, although they are not familial groups. Currently, the Mafia is most active in the northeastern United States, particularly in New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore, New Jersey, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, and the New England region, including Boston, Providence, and Hartford. The organization also maintains a strong presence in Chicago and significant influence in other Midwestern cities like Kansas City, Detroit, Milwaukee, Cleveland, and St. Louis. Beyond these regions, the Mafia is notably active in Florida, Phoenix, Las Vegas, and Los Angeles. There have been, and to a lesser degree continue to be, Mafia families in northeastern Pennsylvania, Dallas, Denver, New Orleans, Rochester, San Francisco, San Jose, Seattle, and Tampa. Although the prominence of regional crime families in these areas has diminished, their descendants still engage in criminal activities. Meanwhile, in other areas, consolidation has led to the control of rackets by more dominant crime families from neighboring cities. At its height, the Mafia had Cosa Nostra families in at least 26 American cities, with numerous affiliates and associates in other locations. There are 5 principal Mafia families in New York City, known as the Five Families: the Gambino, Lucchese, Genovese, Bonanno, and Colombo families. These Italian-American Mafia groups have historically led organized crime in the United States. Each family operates in its own territory independently, while national coordination is managed by the Commission, comprising the bosses of the most powerful families. Despite the rise of other criminal organizations, the Mafia continues to play a dominant role in organized crime across the United States, especially in the northeastern United States and Chicago. The term Mafia originates from the Sicilian word mafioso. This word loosely translates to swagger, but can also mean boldness or bravado. In 19th century Sicily, when describing a man, mafioso, or mafioso in Italian, connoted characteristics like fearless, enterprising, and proud, as noted by researcher Diego Gambetta. For a woman, the feminine version mafiosa typically means beautiful or attractive. In North America, the term Italian American Mafia is often casually called the Mafia or the Mob, However, these terms might be ambiguous without specific context. The Mafia might refer to the Sicilian Mafia in particular, or to Italian organized crime more broadly, while the mob could denote other similar crime syndicates, like the Irish mob, or organized crime in general. History of the Mafia. Origins. The earliest documented instance of what would become the Mafia in the United States appeared in the spring of 1869. A report by the New Orleans Times described the city's second district as overrun by infamous Sicilian murderers, counterfeiters, and burglars. These criminals had reportedly formed a joint venture for plundering and causing trouble in the city. Most emigration from southern Italy was directed towards Brazil and Argentina, with New Orleans being a major port with frequent traffic to both places. In the United States, mafia groups first gained prominence in the New York area, evolving from small neighborhood gangs in impoverished Italian enclaves to citywide and eventually nationwide networks. The Black Hand referred to a widespread extortion technique in Italian neighborhoods around the early 20th century, often misconstrued as a synonym for the mafia. It was a criminal method practiced by various small gangs, not a single organization. Black Hand extortion was mistakenly thought to be the work of a unified group due to its similar execution across different Italian American communities. Giuseppe Esposito was the first known mafia member to settle in the United States. He, along with 6 others, fled to New York after murdering several wealthy landowners and officials in Sicily. Esposito was captured in New Orleans in 1881 and sent back to Italy. Between the 1890s and 1920, the 5 Points Gang, founded by Paul Kelly, became influential in New York City's Little Italy. Kelly's gang included future notorious crime bosses like Johnny Torrio, Al Capone, Lucky Luciano, and Frankie Yale, who often clashed with the Jewish Eastman gang in the same area. Additionally, a significant mafia family operated in East Harlem, while the Neapolitan Camorra was active in Brooklyn. In Chicago, the Italian neighborhood in the 19th Ward, known as the Bloody 19th, was notorious for mafia-related violence, feuds, and vendettas. New Orleans possibly witnessed the first high-profile mafia incident in the United States that garnered both national and international attention. On October 15, 1890, Police Superintendent David Hennessy was assassinated, though it remains unclear if Italian immigrants were responsible or if it was a setup against despised immigrants. Following his murder, many Sicilians were arrested on dubious charges and 19 were indicted, despite their eventual acquittal amid allegations of witness tampering and bribery. A lynch mob in New Orleans killed 11 of the 19 defendants on March 14, 1891, in retaliation. 2 were hanged, 9 shot, and the rest escaped. Prohibition Era. On January 16, 1919, the United States initiated Prohibition with the 18th Amendment, outlawing the production, transportation, and sale of alcohol. Despite this prohibition, public demand for alcohol remained high, leading to a climate where crime became a means to supply alcohol, often with the tolerance of police and city officials. Although not directly linked to the mafia, the murder rate surged by over 40% during Prohibition, from 6.8 to 9.7 per 100,000 people. In the first 3 months after the 18th Amendment, $500,000 worth of bonded whiskey was stolen from government warehouses. The potential profits from the alcohol trade outweighed the risks of legal penalties, challenging enforcement efforts. Over 900,000 cases of liquor were transported to the edges of American cities, with criminal gangs and politicians capitalizing on this opportunity, importing most of the alcohol from Canada, the Caribbean, and the American Midwest. The early 1920s saw the rise of fascism in Italy under Benito Mussolini, prompting waves of Italian immigrants, including members of the Sicilian Mafia, to flee to the United States as Mussolini intensified his crackdown on mafia activities in Italy. Many Italian immigrants lived in tenements, and some joined the American Mafia to escape poverty. The Mafia seized the opportunity presented by Prohibition, profiting immensely from bootlegging, surpassing earnings from traditional activities like protection, extortion, gambling, and prostitution. The Prohibition era saw mafia families amassing great wealth and establishing the family structure in various cities. Bootlegging required a diverse workforce including bosses, lawyers, truckers, and enforcers. Gangs routinely hijacked rival alcohol shipments, demanding protection money and employing armed guards for their own shipments. In the 1920s, the Italian Mafia engaged in violent conflicts for control of the lucrative bootlegging business, clashing with Irish and Jewish gangs in different territories. In New York City, Frankie Yale fought with the Irish American White Hand Gang, while in Chicago, Al Capone's family clashed with the Irish American North Side Gang. By the late 1920s in New York City, two major criminal factions had emerged, led by Joe Masseria and Salvatore Maranzano, culminating in the Castellamarese War. Masseria's assassination in 1931 led to Maranzano dividing New York City into 5 families. Maranzano, as the first leader of the American Mafia, established the organization's code of conduct, family divisions, and dispute resolution procedures. He declared himself the boss of all bosses, demanding tribute from all families, but his role was short-lived, and he was murdered within 6 months on orders from Charles Lucky Luciano, a former Masseria lieutenant who had sided with Maranzano before orchestrating Masseria's killing. The Commission. To replace the autocratic mafia system of appointing a single boss as the capo di tutti capi, or boss of all bosses, Luciano established the Commission in 1931. This body, composed of the leaders of the most powerful families, provided equal say in decision-making and resolved inter-family disputes. This governance structure ushered in a period of peace and wealth for the American Mafia. By mid-century, the Mafia encompassed 26 commission-approved crime families, each based in a different city, with the exception of New York's 5 families. Each family functioned autonomously within its own territory. Contrasting with the older generation of mustache Petes, like Maranzano and Masseria, who primarily collaborated with Italians, Luciano's Young Turks were more open to working with other groups, including Jewish American criminal networks, maximizing profits. The Mafia prospered by adhering to a strict Sicilian-originated code, involving an organized hierarchical structure and a vow of silence, omerta, to avoid police cooperation. Violation of these rules could result in death. The Mafia's power, which escalated during Prohibition, persisted even after alcohol was legalized. Criminal operations expanded during the Prohibition era, diversified into various other ventures, including illegal gambling, loan sharking, extortion, protection rackets, drug trafficking, fencing, and labor racketeering, particularly through union control. In mid-20th century America, the Mafia had significant influence over several labor unions, notably the Teamsters and the International Longshoremen's Association. This influence paved the way for Mafia involvement in lucrative legitimate businesses like construction, demolition, waste management, trucking, and industries related to waterfronts and garments. They could exploit union health and pension funds, extort businesses with strike threats, and engage in bid rigging. In New York City, most construction projects required the 5 families' approval. In the port and dock sectors, the Mafia bribed union members for information on valuable incoming goods, which they would then steal and fence. Meyer Lansky ventured into the Cuban casino industry in the 1930s, while the Mafia was already involved in the Cuban sugar and rum trade, with his friend Fulgencio Batista becoming Cuba's president in 1952. mafia bosses were able to invest in legalized casinos, owning at least 19 of them. However, the Cuban Revolution led by Fidel Castro, which ousted Batista, also ended the mafia's Cuban ventures by banning US investments. Las Vegas, regarded as an open city for any crime family, became a prime target once Nevada legalized gambling. Since the 1940s, mafia families from New York, Cleveland, Kansas City, Milwaukee, and Chicago had stakes in Las Vegas casinos, often financed by loans from the Teamsters Pension Fund, which they controlled. They used front men for casino operations, skimming millions of dollars before it was recorded and funneling it back to their families. The mafia operated largely unchallenged due to law enforcement's lack of resources and knowledge. Corruption and witness intimidation were common. The Kefauver hearings by a U.S. Senate committee in 1951 acknowledged the existence of a sinister criminal organization known as the Mafia. Despite many mobsters being subpoenaed, little substantial information was disclosed. The 1957 Appalachian Meeting, a major mafia congregation in New York, was a turning point, compelling the FBI to acknowledge and address organized crime seriously. In 1963, Joe Valachi became the first mafia member to turn informant, exposing the mafia's operations and confirming its existence to law enforcement. This led the FBI to intensify efforts against the mafia's national crime syndicate, establishing organized crime strike forces in various cities. While this increased pressure on the mafia, it initially did little to hinder their criminal activities. However, by the early 1980s, the FBI had successfully expelled mafia influence from Las Vegas casinos and began effectively loosening the mafia's grip on labor unions. The mafia's involvement in the U.S. economy. By the late 1970s, the mafia had infiltrated numerous industries, including betting on college sports. Members associated with the Lucchese crime family, including Rick Kuhn, Henry Hill, and others, were involved in a point-shaving scandal with the Boston College basketball team during the 1978-1979 season. They manipulated game outcomes by bribing and intimidating team members, ensuring that bets on the point spreadmas would be favorable to them. The mafia also profited significantly from gas tax fraud. They devised schemes to withhold tax payments on the sale of large volumes of wholesale petroleum, enabling them to undercut prices. Michael Franzese, known as the Yuppie Don, masterminded a gas scandal that evaded over $290 million in gasoline taxes, often closing gas stations before taxes could be collected. He was apprehended in 1985. Labor racketeering was another tactic the mafia used to gain control over various industries on a large scale, particularly in cities with substantial labor unions like New York, Philadelphia, Chicago, and Detroit. Mafia members infiltrated unions, with some becoming union leaders, using this influence to extort money and resources from major businesses. Recent indictments for corruption involved unions like the New Jersey Waterfront, the Concrete Workers Union, and the Teamsters. Restaurants, especially in New York City, served as another avenue for the mafia's economic power. Not only were these restaurants sites for significant meetings and killings, but they also functioned as fronts for drug smuggling. Between 1985 and 1987, Sicilian mafiosi in the US reportedly smuggled around $1.65 billion worth of heroin through pizzerias, concealing it within various food products. In Las Vegas, Nevada, the mafia's influence was particularly notable, beginning just after World War II with the opening of the Flamingo and other casinos like the Stardust, Sahara, Tropicana, Desert Inn, and Riviera. The mafia's investment in these casinos played a significant role in Las Vegas's mid-20th century development and economic growth. Casino profits, appearing as legitimate business revenue, funded the mafia's illegal activities from the 1950s to the 1980s. However, the Mafia's grip on Las Vegas weakened in the 1960s. The Nevada state legislature's 1969 law easing corporate ownership of casinos and the subsequent U.S. Congress's RICO Act in 1970 empowered law enforcement to more effectively target mafia activities. By the 1980s, there was a marked decline in mafia presence in Las Vegas, with many mobsters being convicted and imprisoned under the RICO law. The RICO Act, the enactment of the Racketeer-Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, RICO Act, in 1970 marked a turning point in the fight against organized crime. This federal law introduced severe penalties for crimes committed as part of an ongoing criminal organization, including up to 20 years in prison per offense, fines up to $25,000, and mandatory forfeiture of properties gained from such criminal activities. The strength of the RICO Act lies in its ability to target the criminal organization as a whole, rather than just individual members who could be easily replaced. Between 1981 and 1992, the law led to the conviction of 23 mafia bosses, along with 13 underbosses and 43 captains, totaling over 1,000 crime family members by 1990. Despite the significant impact on many mafia families, the most influential groups continue to exercise control in their respective regions, albeit with increased difficulties due to the new legal pressures. In a notable RICO case in 1992, John Gotti and Frank Locascio were sentenced to life imprisonment, largely thanks to the testimony of informant Sammy Gravano, who received immunity in return. The Federal Witness Protection Program also played a crucial role, providing new identities and financial support for Life to Mafia members who testified against their peers. This strategy resulted in the imprisonment of hundreds of mafia affiliates and a marked decline in mafia power and influence since the 1990s. On January 9, 2003, Joseph Massino, the boss of the Bonanno crime family, was arrested and indicted along with Salvatore Vitale, Frank Lino, and capo Daniel Mangelli. Massino faced charges including the 1981 murder of Dominic "Sonny Black" Napolitano. His trial began in May 2004, with Judge Nicholas Garaufis presiding. Facing 11 RICO counts related to multiple crimes, Massino was found guilty on all counts in July 2004. He was expected to receive a life sentence without parole, and the jury also agreed to a $10 million forfeiture of his assets as the Bonanno boss. Right after his conviction on July 30th, as the court session concluded, Joseph Massino sought a meeting with Judge Garaufis to propose his cooperation. Facing the possibility of the death penalty for the murder of Ciacia, as per the directive of then-Attorney General John Ashcroft, Massino hoped to avoid execution. He was at risk of becoming the first mafia boss to be executed since Lepke Buchalter in 1944, and the first New York crime family boss to turn informant, following Ralph Natal of the Philadelphia crime family, who became an informant in 1999 under drug charges. Into the 21st century, the mafia remains engaged in various illicit activities, including murder, extortion, public official corruption, gambling, infiltrating legitimate businesses, labor racketeering, loan sharking, tax fraud, and stock market manipulation. While the mafia's presence was once nationwide, it is now primarily concentrated in the Northeast and Chicago. Despite competition from other criminal groups like the Russian Mafia, Chinese triads, and Mexican drug cartels, the mafia maintains significant influence in these areas due to its organized hierarchical structure. Law enforcement agencies, however, are increasingly focusing on homeland security since the September 11th attacks, leading to concerns about a potential resurgence of the mafia. To evade FBI scrutiny and prosecution, the modern mafia has begun outsourcing many of its operations to other criminal entities, including motorcycle gangs. Structure. The American Mafia maintains a strict hierarchical structure, rooted in its Sicilian origins but adapted to its American context by Salvatore Maranzano in 1931. He established the 5 families, each comprising a boss, underboss, capos, and soldiers who are exclusively full-blooded Italian Americans, although associates can be of any background. Members who are formally inducted into the Mafia are termed made men, signifying their untouchable status in the criminal underworld and ensuring that any harm done to them would invite retaliation. Except for associates, all members in the Mafia are made and officially part of a crime family. The organization's top 3 positions form the administration, under which are various factions led by cap regimes, captains. These cap regimes head crews of soldiers and associates, functioning similarly to managers in a business, and report to the administration. Orders from the boss are typically relayed down the chain of command, ensuring the upper echelons of the Mafia are shielded from legal scrutiny by providing plausible deniability. Additional roles sometimes exist within the family's leadership. Ruling panels, often comprising 3 or 5 members, may be established when a boss is imprisoned to share the family's leadership responsibilities and dilute law enforcement focus on any single individual. The roles of family messenger and street boss were innovations of Vincent Gigante, a former leader of the Genovese family. These positions further diversify the leadership structure and help in evading police detection. Boss. The boss, also known as the Don or Godfather, is the leader of the family, typically ruling in an authoritarian manner. They receive a portion of the profits from every operation conducted by family members and those in the controlled region. Selection of the boss varies by family, often through a vote by the cap regimes. In case of a tie, the underboss has the deciding vote. Historically, all family members voted for the boss, but by the late 1950s, such gatherings attracted too much attention. Many boss elections are considered predetermined, like John Gotti's election in 1986, which was marked by intimidation and a conspicuous show of force. Underboss. The underboss is second in command, usually appointed by the boss. This role involves overseeing daily operations or managing the family's most profitable ventures, often earning a share of the income. The underboss is typically the successor in cases of the boss's imprisonment or incapacity. Consigliere, acting as the advisor and sometimes as the boss's right-hand man, the consigliere mediates disputes and represents the family in dealings with others. This role, traditionally filled by a respected senior member, is crucial for the inner workings of the family. The consigliere is often a close, trusted friend or advisor to the boss. Typically, the third-ranking official in a family's administration, the consigliere is usually a senior, highly respected member well-versed in the family's operations. The boss typically selects a close, trusted friend or advisor for this critical position, cap regime or capo. A cap regime, also known as a captain or skipper, leads a group or crew of soldiers, generally comprising 10-20 soldiers and numerous associates. Appointed by the boss and accountable either to the boss or the underboss, the capo shares a portion of the earnings from his crew's operations with the family's leadership. The capo is tasked with various responsibilities, including serious criminal activities, and often plays a key role in labor racketeering by influencing union activities. A particularly influential capo can exert considerable power, sometimes surpassing that of higher-ranking members. In certain instances, as with Anthony Corallo, a capo might even assume leadership of the family, circumventing the traditional mafia hierarchy. Soldier, soldato. A soldato, or soldier, is a fully initiated member of both the mafia and a specific mafia crime family. Historically, soldiers were required to be of full Italian heritage, but many modern families now accept those with half Italian descent, particularly on their father's side. Once made, a soldier is considered untouchable, meaning any harm against them requires approval from their boss. Soldiers are key operatives in the family, engaged in various criminal activities like assault, murder, extortion, and intimidation. In return, they manage lucrative criminal enterprises assigned by their superiors and enjoy full access to the family's resources and influence. Associate. Associates are not formal members of the mafia, but are affiliated with a crime family. Their roles vary widely, ranging from undertaking tasks similar to those of a soldier to performing basic errands. Associates, often seen as prospective mobsters, prove their worth to potentially become soldiers when the family is open to new members. Associates of Italian descent may be considered for promotion to soldiers. Their roles can include acting as intermediaries in criminal dealings, drug trafficking to divert police attention from members, or they might be business people or professionals like restaurant owners or corrupt union officials who collaborate with the family. While non-Italians cannot advance beyond associate status, some, like Meyer Lansky, Bugsy Siegel, and Jimmy Hoffa, have held considerable influence and respect within their respective crime families. Rituals and customs. The Mafia's initiation ceremony for becoming a made man has its roots in various traditions, including Roman Catholic confraternities and Masonic lodges in mid-19th century Sicily. During the initiation, the inductee's finger is pricked to draw blood, which is then dropped onto a card with a saint's image. The card is set alight, and as it burns, it's passed quickly from hand to hand to avoid burns, while the inductee pledges allegiance to the Mafia family, known as the Omerta. This process was confirmed by former Mafia member Tommaso Buscetta in 1986. The assassination of a made man requires approval from the family's leadership to prevent retaliatory strikes and potential gang wars. The term "going to the mattresses," which signifies preparing for or being in a state of war, gained popularity from the film The Godfather, though its origins are unclear. Omerta, the Mafia's code of silence, emphasizes non-cooperation with authorities and outsiders. Historically, becoming a made man required Sicilian descent, later expanded to include full Italian descent, and eventually extended to those of half-Italian descent through their father. In 2000, it was reportedly decided by the Commission to revert to the rule requiring both parents to be of Italian descent. Additionally, it's common for Mafia members to have mistresses. Traditionally, made members were discouraged from having mustaches, a custom dating back to the mustache Petes. The American Mafia also views homosexuality as incompatible with their code, as evidenced by the 1992 killing of John D'Amato, acting boss of the De Cavalcante family, over suspicions of his homosexual activities, cooperation with the US government. During World War II, the US Naval Intelligence formed an alliance with Mafia boss Lucky Luciano to secure the New York waterfront against sabotage following the SS Normandy incident. This event, which occurred on February 9, 1942, served as a significant catalyst for serious discussions about safeguarding the east coast of the United States. The SS Normandy, a luxury ocean liner being repurposed as a troopship, caught fire under mysterious circumstances, resulting in the injury of 128 individuals out of the 1,500 sailors and civilians on board. By the following day, the vessel was reduced to a smoldering wreck. Only one life was lost in the incident, but the extensive damage raised suspicions of sabotage. 12 years later, William B. Hurlins, Commissioner of Investigation, highlighted the necessity of US government collaboration with prominent criminals in his report. He emphasized the concerns of intelligence authorities regarding sabotage and espionage, particularly the leak of sensitive information about convoy movements. The burning of the Normandy, which was being converted into the Navy Auxiliary Lafayette at a pier in New York City's North River, intensified these suspicions, prompting the need for such unconventional alliances. Plots to assassinate Fidel Castro. In August 1960, Colonel Sheffield Edwards, who was at the helm of the Central Intelligence Agency's CIA Office of Security, initiated a proposal to assassinate Fidel Castro, the then leader of Cuba, using mafia hitmen. From that month until April 1961, the CIA collaborated with the mafia in an attempt to execute a series of assassination plots against Castro. These plots varied in method, including plans to poison or shoot him. Notable mafia figures reportedly involved in this covert operation included Sam Giancana, Carlos Marcello, Santo Trafficante Jr., and John Rosselli. Law enforcement and the mafia. Several mafia families have a strict rule against murdering state authorities due to the potential for severe police backlash. In some cases, even plotting such a crime is punishable by death within the organization. For instance, Jewish mobster and mafia associate Dutch Schultz was allegedly killed by his Italian mafia peers because they feared his plan to assassinate New York City prosecutor Thomas Dewey would draw unprecedented police scrutiny to the mafia. Despite this rule, the mafia has historically been involved in the killing of law enforcement officers. For example, New York police officer Joe Petrosino was assassinated by Sicilian mobsters while on duty in Sicily, leading to a statue being erected in his honor across from a known Lucchese family hangout. The Kefauver Committee, led by Tennessee Senator Estes Kefauver in 1951, was a U.S. Senate special committee that concluded the existence of a sinister criminal organization known as the Mafia across the United States. The widely televised Kefauver hearings brought this issue to public attention and pressured the FBI to acknowledge organized crime's presence. In response, the FBI launched the Top Hoodlum program in 1953, aiming to collect and centralize intelligence on racketeers. The Appalachian Meeting in 1957 was a significant mafia summit at Joseph Joe the Barber Barbara's home in Appalachian, New York. Attended by about 100 mafiosi from the US, Italy, and Cuba, the meeting discussed various criminal activities, including the division of operations controlled by the recently deceased Albert Anastasia. This meeting led to a crackdown, with many mobsters being detained and indicted, confirming the existence of a widespread criminal conspiracy. Joe Valachi, a Genovese crime family soldier, became an informant following his 1959 narcotics conviction and subsequent prison murder in 1962. His testimony in the Valachi hearings before Senator John L. McClellan's subcommittee in 1963 was the first public acknowledgement by a mafia member of the organization's existence. Valachi's revelations detailed the history, operations, and rituals of the mafia, but did not directly lead to the prosecution of any leaders. However, his testimony helped solve several murders and exposed the structure of American organized crime. List of mafia families. The United States has been home to various mafia families, with some having influence beyond their primary areas, including affiliations in other regions and countries. Notably, the Bonanno and Buffalo crime families have extended their influence to factions in Canada, such as the Rizzuto and Cotroni crime families linked to the Bonannos, and the Lupino and Papaglia crime families associated with the Buffalo family. Here is a list of mafia families that have been active in the U.S. Bufalino crime family, based in northeastern Pennsylvania. Chicago outfit. Cleveland crime family. Dallas crime family. DeCavalcante crime family, based in northern New Jersey. Denver crime family. Detroit partnership. The five families, which are Bonanno crime family, Colombo crime family, Gambino crime family, Genovese crime family, Lucchese crime family, all based in New York. Kansas City crime family, Los Angeles crime family, Magadino crime family, based in Buffalo, New York, Milwaukee crime family, New Orleans crime family, Patriarcha crime family, based in New England, Philadelphia crime family, Pittsburgh crime family, Rochester crime family, San Francisco crime family, San Jose crime family, Seattle crime family, St. Louis crime family, Trafficante crime family, based in Tampa, Florida. These families have had a significant impact in their respective regions and, in some cases, internationally. In popular culture, film. The 1932 movie Scarface draws inspiration from the life of notorious gangster Al Capone. Paramount Pictures released The Brotherhood in 1968, starring Kirk Douglas as a mafia don, but it wasn't a commercial success. However, this didn't deter Paramount's Robert Evans from funding the completion of Mario Puzo's mafia-themed novel and acquiring its screen rights. Directed by Francis Ford Coppola, The Godfather turned into a massive success both critically and financially, even winning the Best Picture Oscar. It set a new standard for mafia-related films and spawned a successful sequel, The Godfather Part 2, along with other mafia-centric movies like Honor Thy Father, Lucky Luciano, Lepke, and Capone. Television. In 1981, NBC aired The Gangster Chronicles, a comprehensive 13-part miniseries depicting the rise of major 1920s and 1930s crime bosses. The Sopranos, an HBO series, portrayed contemporary American-Italian mob culture in New Jersey. While fictional, the series drew on creator David Chase's experiences around New Jersey crime families. The documentary, Inside the American Mob, brought together ex-mafia members discussing the five families' rules and their eventual decline due to FBI infiltration. The Simpsons features a character named Fat Tony, depicted as an underboss of the Springfield Mafia. Video games. The Mafia has been a popular theme in many video games. The Mafia series by 2K Czech and Hangar 13 consists of 3 games focusing on characters entangled with fictional Mafia families. The Grand Theft Auto series by Rockstar Games frequently includes Mafia families, particularly in settings based on New York, like Liberty City. These games feature families such as the Farelli, Leone, Sindaco, Ancelotti, Gambetti, Lupacella, Messina, and Pavano, in addition to the Pegorino family. These mafia groups often serve as either allies or adversaries to the player. Additionally, a video game adaptation of The Godfather was released in 2006, followed by a sequel based on the film's sequel.